Hello and welcome back to the Military Time. Today we are tracking a rapidly developing situation that is shaking the Kremlin to its core. The Crimea Bridge, a symbol of Russian control over the annexed peninsula and a critical military supply route, has suffered a massive structural collapse after what officials are calling a high-precision strike. This event has not only disrupted Russia's logistics, but has dealt a major political and psychological blow to Vladimir Putin himself. Analysts are already describing it as one of the most humiliating setbacks Moscow has faced since the beginning of the war. In the early morning hours before sunrise, satellite imagery and regional footage showed a huge plume of smoke rising over the Kerch Strait. Moments later, traffic cameras captured the bridge's central span buckling, with large sections plunging into the water. Eyewitnesses reported two loud detonations followed by a fireball that lit up the night sky. Russian emergency services rushed to the scene, but the damage was already catastrophic: twisted steel, shattered roadways, and a rail line left hanging dangerously unsupported. Russian authorities immediately blamed Ukrainian forces, calling the incident a terrorist attack. Ukraine has not officially claimed responsibility, but unnamed military sources speaking to European outlets suggest the strike targeted the bridge's structural weak points, exploiting vulnerabilities previously identified during months of intelligence gathering. What is clear, however, is that the precision of the attack demonstrates careful planning and advanced capabilities, a message that Kiev may have deliberately intended to send. For Moscow, the implications go far beyond the physical damage. The Crimea Bridge is more than just a logistical route. It is a potent symbol of Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, a centerpiece of Putin's political legacy. For years, the Kremlin proudly showcased the bridge as one of the president's great achievements, even releasing videos of Putin personally driving across it. That same symbol now lies partially collapsed, exposing vulnerabilities that Russian officials tried to hide from both domestic and international audiences. Military analysts point out that the collapse strikes at the heart of Russia's war effort. The bridge served as a major supply artery for transporting ammunition, fuel, heavy armored vehicles, and reinforcements into southern Ukraine. With the bridge crippled, Russia must now rely on slower, more exposed supply routes running through occupied land routes near the Sea of Azov, routes that Ukrainian forces have already been targeting with HIMARS, drones, and long-range artillery. This disruption could significantly impact Russia's ability to maintain momentum on the front lines, especially as winter conditions intensify. Inside Russia, the reaction has been equally turbulent. Prominent nationalist bloggers, usually supportive of the war, have erupted with criticism, questioning how such a critical asset could be left exposed. They accuse the Kremlin of incompetence, corruption, and failure to adapt. Some are even calling for high-ranking military officials to be dismissed, arguing that repeated failures cannot continue to be excused. This internal backlash highlights an increasingly fragile political climate for Putin, who has faced growing dissatisfaction from hardliners over battlefield losses, mobilization controversies, and economic pressure. Meanwhile, Ukrainian morale is soaring. Social media across Ukraine is filled with posts celebrating what many see as a symbolic victory over Russian occupation. Civilians in cities like Odessa and Kyiv shared videos of fireworks and cheering crowds. Although Ukrainian officials have remained cautious, the sentiment among the population is clear. The collapse of the bridge represents a powerful moment of resistance, a sign that even Russia's most prized infrastructure is not untouchable. Internationally, the reaction has been swift. Western defense analysts believe the collapse may mark a significant shift in the strategic balance of the war. They argue that Ukraine has demonstrated an ability to strike deep into contested areas, forcing Russia to rethink its logistics and shore up defenses in places previously considered secure. Several NATO officials commented anonymously that this event highlights the effectiveness of Western supplied intelligence, technology, and coordination. While no government has publicly acknowledged assisting with this specific operation, analysts emphasize that without advanced reconnaissance tools, such a strike would have been extremely difficult. At the same time, fears of escalation are growing. Within hours of the collapse, Russian state media began circulating demands for a harsh retaliation. Some military commentators are pushing for widespread strikes on Ukrainian energy infrastructure, while others call for a new wave of mobilization. But the Kremlin now faces a dilemma. Any drastic response risks deepening domestic discontent and exposing further weaknesses in its military command. The psychological impact of this strike may prove even more significant than the immediate tactical consequences. For the Russian public, who have been told repeatedly that the war is under control and that Crimea is firmly secured, the images of a collapsing bridge have shattered a narrative carefully built by the Kremlin. For Putin, whose authority partially relies on projecting strength and stability, the event represents a personal embarrassment, a direct challenge to the image he has cultivated for over 2 decades. Ukrainian officials, speaking off record, suggest that the timing of the attack is no coincidence. With Russian forces attempting to stabilize front lines and prepare for winter operations, hitting the Crimea Bridge now maximizes disruption. Military trucks, fuel convoys, and armored vehicles are already backed up for kilometers on the remaining routes. Some convoys reportedly turned around entirely, fearing further attacks on alternative supply lines. As cleanup crews and engineers attempt to assess the damage, Russian media is attempting to downplay the extent of the collapse. Broadcasters are calling it a partial structural failure and insisting that repairs will be completed soon. However, independent engineers reviewing footage warn that rebuilding sections of the bridge could take months, if not longer. The materials required, the complexity of the structure, and the continued threat of additional strikes all pose major challenges. And the danger is far from over. Military experts warn that Ukraine may attempt follow-up strikes, aiming to ensure that even temporary fixes cannot restore full functionality. Drone activity has increased across the Kerch region, forcing Russian forces to deploy additional air defense units that they desperately need in other parts of the front. Every system moved to Crimea is a system removed from Kherson, Donetsk, or Zaporizhia, a fact Ukrainian planners are likely aware of. On the diplomatic stage, the incident has stirred discussions about Russia's long-term hold over Crimea. Several Western leaders have publicly reiterated that Crimea is Ukrainian territory, and emphasized that any military or infrastructure within occupied regions is a legitimate target. This renewed support strengthens Ukraine's position as it continues to push for international recognition of its right to conduct such operations. As we continue to monitor developments, one thing is certain: the collapse of the Crimea Bridge marks a turning point. It exposes Russia's logistical vulnerabilities, heightens political pressure on the Kremlin, boosts Ukrainian morale, and signals to the world that the war is entering a new phase where even the most heavily defended assets are no longer safe. The coming days will reveal Russia's response, whether Moscow chooses escalation, restraint, or a shift in strategy. But the damage has already been done. Putin now faces not only a military setback, but a symbolic humiliation with global visibility. The bridge that once stood as a monument to his ambitions now lies broken, serving as a stark reminder that control over Crimea is far from guaranteed. Stay tuned, because this story is still unfolding. More updates and expert analysis will follow as we learn how this monumental event reshapes the war's trajectory.